This is a 51 Vets case study about franchising. I'm joined today by Sean McPhee, who is the brand leader at The Seals, which is part of Eversmith Brands, which is a portfolio company of longtime 51 Vets supporter, the Riverside Company, and Adam, who's a 51 Vets member and is working with Sean as a franchisor consultant. Adam, I'm sure you'll correct me. We'll let you guys walk into it. But here are the topics that we'll be discussing today. First, with 51 Vets, where are we at with franchising and why are we talking about it? Then we're going to go into Adam's background with his transition. Then why franchising, the franchisor system appealed to him. And then we'll talk through some of the considerations for veterans who are going through transition, the pros and the cons when they look at franchising, some of the opportunities that are uniquely available to them. And then the process, Adam, that you went through to work together with Sean and the rest of the team. What is the current day-to-day that you'd do, and what's the future of this particular business? So let's talk about first franchising and 51 Vets. In the past, we've really focused on our 475 plus members getting into consulting, investment banking, private equity, the portfolio companies of private equity, and then some of our private equity sponsors, such as the Riverside Company, said, why are you guys not looking at franchising? This is insane. This is such a good opportunity for your members. And we finally hit a tipping point with our members and the supporters like Riverside Company and Eversmith, where we now have the resources to connect our members with people who have the opportunities and the knowledge to coach them through that pathway. So let's actually just kind of set the stage a little bit. Sean, if you wouldn't mind just saying, what is the Seals and Eversmith? Then we'll turn it over to Adam to kind of talk about his transition out of the military and his considerations for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Jordan. The Seals, what we are gasket replacement specialists. So we go into commercial kitchens. For those that aren't familiar with the gasket, the easy way to describe it is the rubber piece on the door that actually creates the seal and keeps the cold air in. Right. When you're in commercial kitchens, these things take abuse. They wear out. They're a critical piece of that particular refrigerator, and people can get pretty sick if they're not replaced. So our business is founded on being able to go in, help these restaurant managers take something that's needs to be looked at and replaced off of their plate. And there's just not a lot of competition out there that does it. So it's something that's very much needed. It's recession resistant, and it's something that is, it's basically designed to wear out. So the need is always out there.
When did the brand start? How many franchisees or locations? What are just some facts and figures to get
Yeah,
there?
absolutely. So our brand was started about 16 years ago by a gentleman named Andy Dinkin. He's our founder. He's still a franchisee. Has the state of North Carolina. He founded the brand again 16 years ago. Almost 2 years ago now, he was approached by someone at Riverside that saw this as a great opportunity to bring it into their portfolio of companies inside Eversmith Brands itself. And where, Eversmith is focused on that, B2B space. We're doing landscaping, we're doing snow removal, we're doing hood cleaning inside kitchens with Kitchen Guard. We're also doing restoration, so disaster restoration. If you had a fire or flood in your house, we've got a company that helps with that. We've got another one that does floor care. So it just kind of really fit in with what Eversmith and Riverside were trying to do. When Andy sold to Riverside, Eversmith rather, there were 5 franchisees. Today we're at 23 franchisees, with many other territories that are sold but not yet open.
Snow, right?
Snow.
There we go. And can you give a sense of just high level what the startup costs are, or to be a franchisee, and
Sure.
then Adam, as a side note, I need to remember that both of us should mute whenever the other person is talking, just because I know that I'm moving around things on my desk.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, Sean, can you just give us a sense of like ballpark, what does it cost to actually start this and become a franchisee?
Yeah, absolutely. For the seals itself, the good news is there's not any specialized equipment. Like we don't have to go somewhere specific to get a specific kind of machine or a certification or that. Our recommended quote unquote tool package is run to Home Depot and buy these things, and it's about $200. And half of it is probably stuff that a lot of these veterans already actually own. You know, some screwdrivers, a drill, some self-tapping screws, and a heat gun, or what it is. Now, our typical franchise fee starts at $49,000 for the franchise. However, because Eversmith is led by a Marine combat veteran, you will find most franchisors actually offer a discount to veterans of the franchise fee, to the point where Eversmith itself offers $10,000 off of that for honorably discharged veterans.
Got it. And so that's the franchise fee. And then what are just ballpark, like, to get this thing off the ground? I'm a franchisee. I've been vetted, win-win. Let's start. What is the
Well,
first?
the good thing with us is, right, you need probably somewhere between 30 and $45,000 in working capital to cover you through the first 3 months, because with us you don't have an inventory requirement, so you're not front loading a bunch of money for these gaskets. As a matter of fact, all of our gaskets are custom made when they're ordered. Right, so you don't have to have a van full of inventory. You see a lot of these other service companies, and they open up the van and it's 85 million screws and this piece of equipment and that part and all that. We don't have
Yeah.
that. All like I said, our equipment package is pretty low, and most of it goes to Home Depot. Our gaskets, the way we actually take care of our product is we order them. Our supplier manufactures them, typically gets them shipped out to our franchisees 24 to 48 hours. It's usually 24. During the higher season it can be 48. Shipping time is ground shipping, depends on where you're at in the country. So in most cases we can get back into these restaurants and these kitchens and
Yeah.
replace these gaskets within 7 to 10 business days.
Got it. Well, let's dive in more into some of the, FAQs in a little bit, and let's shift gears over to Adam. If you can kind of give your background, in how long were you active, what were you doing, and then kind of walk us through your transition and the considerations that you had.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a Army Ranger in 1st Ranger Battalion for about 9 years. I served as a fire team leader and then went over to the multi-purpose canine section where I served as a canine handler. And then on my way out, I was the Ops NCOIC for the 1st Ranger Battalion's kennel. I transitioned out in the fall of 2024, and my terminal leave lined up perfectly with me starting my MBA at the University of Georgia. So right about the time that I transitioned out and started my MBA, I joined 51 Vets, which was, invaluable to the success that I had in my transition. I kind of intentionally gave myself a little bit of time to kind of decompress after being in the Ranger Regiment for 9 years and just focusing on the MBA. My wife and I also around that time moved up to Wilmington, North Carolina from Savannah. So there was a lot of changes going on. So I took a little bit of time, like I said, and then really
Sorry, were you
around
doing a full-time MBA or?
no, I was doing a hybrid program, so it was primarily online. I did have to do some in-person residencies at the university, but I was primarily in North Carolina the whole time.
Okay. And so where were you last based at?
I was in Savannah, Georgia the entire time at Hunter Army Airfield.
Okay, so 9 years out in 2024, started in the fall of 24 at
Correct.
UGA hybrid MBA, and then moved with your wife to Wilmington, North
Correct.
Carolina. And then, so this is, into late 2024, early 2025. When did you join 51 Vets?
In the fall of 2024, right
Got
around
it.
the time of starting business school and transitioning out.
Yeah. So when you got in to 51 Vets, like what were the different pathways that you were considering, throughout 2024 or 2025? And when did you actually start with, just for context, with the SEALs full time?
In March of this year.
Okay.
So yeah, when I was, taking that time to kind of figure out exactly what I wanted to do, which I'm sure is not uncommon for a lot of guys, going to business school post transition and trying to figure out what the next step looks like. I think like a majority of guys, consulting stuck out, defense tech stuck out, things in that space. And it wasn't really until I went to the New York City gala in November, where I met Justin Gottery, our now CEO, that I really started to transition my focus into the franchising space.
And so that was November of 2025. And
Correct.
for those listening who might not be as familiar with it, every year we host our annual gala with 200 plus people, and we have 20 tables. It's at the Newark Athletic Club, and this is our main fundraising event. It is also where we bring in our members like Adam to get exposure in a multi-day city summit, as well as the gala, to all of these different pathways and the professionals who work at the firms in those pathways, so that they can get connected, learn about the different pathways. And that's where, Adam, you met Justin, who is the head of the Eversmith Brands. And did you know anything about franchising before that, or when did you really start to get exposure to it?
No, I mean, probably on par with what most people think about franchising. When I went to the gala, like when I heard franchising at the time, you think about McDonald's or KFC or your fast food chains. But what I'd learned, throughout my experience talking to Justin, and then to get to where I'm at now, is it is so much more. Every industry, anything you could think of has a franchise, and it's what sets it apart is that you have that level of support there. I think I'd be hard pressed to find a small business idea that you couldn't find a franchisor that's doing that and has a layer of support for that as well.
Yeah. So, um, so this brings us to late 2025. And after you meet Justin and start to get exposure to franchising, kind of walk us through the following months and the conversations you had. And, were you considering being a franchisee at a different Eversmith brand? And, how did you kind of fall into this particular role as a consultant working with the different franchisees?
Yeah, absolutely. So to give you kind of the whole timeline, I met Justin the evening of the gala, so the first night of our New York City week. Had a great conversation with him. He spoke to me about what B2B franchising looked like, and it kind of piqued my interest because, like I said previously, it was all just my thoughts on franchising were not that diverse. But he then spoke the following day at our city summit, and I kept in contact with him. We set up sort of biweekly to monthly mentorship calls. So he actually served as a mentor to me, which is another obvious benefit of 51 Vets, is you have those individuals who are willing to spend their time and dedicate a lot of their time to your success. But after speaking with him and really kind of doing my own research into the franchising business model, I was able to at this point, I was in my electives in my MBA program. So I was actually able to take a Principles of Franchising course through school, which kind of further solidified that, hey, this is super, super unique. It's got a lot of different challenges, and it'll make each day interesting. So it kind of prompted me to approach Justin and kind of hopefully tactfully transition our mentorship calls into like, hey, I think this is really what I want to do.
And what led to this unique role of not being a franchisee, but working at the brand level, supporting the franchisees, as a franchise business coach. And maybe Sean, I'm curious, actually, if you wouldn't mind maybe providing a little context, like how did this role come up as a franchise business coach? Is this at other Eversmith brands? Is this role at other brands outside it? Is it an industry? Is it a common industry role? And what does it actually do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the benefits, when anyone, let alone veterans, considers franchising is, you don't got to figure it out on your own. And a franchise business coach is pretty much an industry standard with established franchisors. Some of the ones that may be startups may not be there yet. But when you go out to Adam's point and everyone's first thought about franchising is a fast food restaurant, right? Oh, I don't want a McDonald's. I don't want a Taco Bell. This, but then you go around and you realize they're like every Planet Fitnesses are all franchised. As an example, everyone thinks it's a corporate location. To Adam's point, there are franchises in anything you can think of. I've worked in the franchise space in restaurants, hotels, drug testing, as an example. But every one of those will have at some point will get a franchise business coach team together with the idea of being there to support the franchisees in their entrepreneur life, right? Making sure it's kind of a two-faceted role in most cases. Number one, help support, provide best practices, share ideas, give another insight into the business that the franchisee may be missing, because like anybody, when you get knee deep in it, sometimes there's that tunnel vision and you miss all of this stuff that's out here. Um, and a franchise business coach can come in and go, "Hey, what about this? You didn't see this over here," and then that's the thing that turns around and makes them a bunch of money, or improves a process or whatever it is. The second piece of a franchise business coach is there to uphold brand standards, right? When you and I'll go back to restaurants, not that we need to, but when you get a Big Mac in Wilmington, North Carolina, the Big Mac should be the same in Sacramento, California, right? It shouldn't be a different recipe or a different sauce. All that. That's what the consumer, that's what the customer expects, that it's going to be the same. And so there's always a avenue, and it's usually not the main focus of a franchise business coach, but there's always an avenue of are they adhering the brand standards? Are they upholding the contract in which they sign?
So, Matt, Adam, can you kind of walk us through, like, did you consider the franchisee route either within the SEALs or with other brands? And how'd you arrive at this kind of the business coach role?
No, I didn't personally, just because of where I was at, in my personal and professional life. I I knew I wanted to work in more of an operations facing role. I think that is, suits my personality. Um, with that being said, I definitely intend on franchise being a franchisee at some point, because I've seen, that the keys to success are there. So if I were personally considering opening a small business, it would be a franchise. But at the time, my interests were those kind of problem solving, operations facing roles where I didn't really want one day to be the same as the other. And this being on the franchisor side of things checked that box entirely. But also the other unique thing about working on the franchisor side, especially in a B2B business, where it's commercial services, you know, and I think this could probably apply to any franchisor, but it's almost patriotic to like be a part of someone's success. These franchisees are putting their entire life savings, or they're dedicating their entire life into their business, and being able to be a part of a small part of their success is super super rewarding, and that's another extremely valuable side to it, aside from the personal, you know operations style to it.
Yeah. So, can you walk us? I'm going to maybe fast forward a little bit through to the process and then we'll come back to kind of pros and cons for vets and franchising in general and the opportunities for vets. So can you walk us through the process that you went through once you kind of, signaled to Justin, hey, I'm actually interested in working with you and this brand or the other brands. What was that process like?
Yeah, so I pretty much, I had an idea of what the different roles look like. Actually, in one of our calls, Justin challenged me to look at Eversmith Brands openings and write him an email as to why each listing would be good or bad. So there was, several different job opportunities, and they were ranging in different, like, franchise development, which is the people who sell franchises, or the working on the customer success team, and any facet. But what I was always drawn to was the ops position, being out and being that support personnel for franchise owners. So it was kind of a no brainer when I responded in my email. I listed out, like, really the main interest that I had was in this franchise business coach role, because it was so unique in that there was going to be different challenges each day, and I could see that just from the job description, honestly. But no, and it's come true entirely.
Yeah.
It's very fast paced. There's different challenges every day, which I love. I mean, problem solving is keeps you on your toes, and I'm a big fan of that. So to answer your question, I wouldn't necessarily say that I picked the seals. I sort of picked Eversmith Brands, and I wanted to be, wherever I could add value. And maybe I'll let Sean speak to kind of the behind the scenes of the seals. But I mean, I'm so glad I ended up where I did, because this is a very young brand for Eversmith, and it's extremely fast growing. So it's even more so, I
Yeah.
feel very rewarded to be a part of this team.
And Sean, before you continue, what I have a question, just like how many current franchise coaches are there? And like, how do you think we're at 23 franchisees right now? Like, how does this in general, is it like, is it 1 to 20? And then you go, then it's 2 to, is it when you guys all right.
So,
and just like, how does that scale? And, Sean, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of, I guess the direct question is, why does someone with Adam's background with no experience in franchising, why is that a fit for this role, and how is that able to add value to those 23 franchisees? Because you might have these guys asking, like, I don't, how can I be a coach? I haven't done franchising. So can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things to unpack there. Now, in the background there, what Adam's talking about after he reached out to Justin and said this was an interest, we didn't even actually have an opening. There was not an actual opening publicized for a franchise business coach, with the seals, because of the size of the brand, right? The number of franchisees that a franchise business coach supports varies from brand to brand to brand, right? It depends on, in my career doing it with such, Quiznos, Subway, as a main example, for us, it was the number of restaurants that we supported, because a franchisee may have, in most cases, the Subway has more than one. So, how many of these restaurants, and you go and you would do checks on the restaurants and training and all that kind of stuff. So it varies from brand to brand to brand. What happened with Adam was that he was in the right place at the right time, saying the right things to the right person, right? Eversmith bought the seals because they saw the potential there. It fit into the portfolio very, very nicely, and it made a lot of sense. To the point where, when I was initially hired as the director of operations, that was before it was needed, right? It's like one of the benefits of the private equity space is they're like, yeah, we understand that the revenue isn't there to support this yet. However, we understand, and we're gonna fund that in order to accelerate the growth. So what happened in the background with Adam, as he's having those conversations with Justin, at some point I'm having conversation with Justin's. I moved into the brand leader position. And Justin says, "Hey, I got this guy that I want you to talk to." And he made a big deal about, you're the brand leader, you're the brand president, you tell me what you think, but I've been mentoring this guy. He told me a little bit about 51 vets, and he's like, if you think he's going to be a good fit and you want him, you can have him, but he's gone through a couple of interviews. I've been mentoring him. And so we basically set up an interview process and had a conversation. And to your question, Jordan, specifically about, why Adam, when he comes from a special ops background, he's in his MBA and he has no franchise experience. That can be good and bad in a couple of different ways. The franchise business coach, what we have to remember about this particular role, and the thing that I tried to make really clear to Adam as I was informing him of this was my career. I didn't come up in franchise marketing. I didn't come up in all the other stuff. I was a franchise ops guy, right? Director of ops, business coach, you name it.
And you've been doing this for what, 23 years?
26.
26 years. How many different brands have you been a part of for that?
I'm going to say 6 or 7, unless we sit here and listed them all out. I got 13 years on and off with Subway in different avenues. Obviously, director of operations for Quiznos when Quiznos was an up and comer, and everyone's going, "Well, that's why they failed, because you were there." I'm like, "No, I was gone long before they failed. I saw what was happening." Again, support role in what was called Value Place Hotels back in the days. Today, you would know it as Woodspring Suites. And then I was brought in to lead and implement the franchise business coach team at Fastest Labs, which is a drug testing franchise.
Got it. And how? Okay, cool. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, but the thing about the franchise business coach role, and the thing that appealed specifically to, and I would say veterans in general, Army Ranger, Special Ops vets, right, is there, it's all systems and processes. And in most cases, we can teach people systems and processes. Obviously, the military is all about systems and processes, right? Here's the manual, do this, go do your PMCS, fill out your 5988, all that kind of stuff. That was half of my life as a young private on Bradley's. And so if you can learn a system and process, that's a huge part of it. But the thing about a franchise business coach, and the thing that made me want to offer Adam a position, was the heart behind it, and the fact that these franchisees that Adam supports, they're not accountable to him. They're individual business owners. So he has to have a relationship. They're friendly, but they're not friends. And he needs to be able to influence that behavior, right, through that coaching model, by sharing best practices, by pointing things out that ultimately makes them more money. And so that's a personality thing. That's a heart thing. And there's a little bit of skill set, obviously involved in that. But what I saw with Adam were a couple things that made me turn around to Justin and go, "Yeah, I'm going to offer this guy a job." First one was the eagerness and the desire, right? It was all there. It was clear, like, I had never thought of this before. I've been talking to Justin. I took the initiative to take this franchise business course as part of my MBA. I'm like, okay, there's desire, there's some eagerness, there's some willingness to learn. And then it was, at that point, it was about the conversation, and it was, me in the interview trying to get Adam to convince me that he's the guy. Because if he can convince, a guy with 26 years experience, would I love to get someone with 26 years experience and throw him in as a franchise business coach? The answer to that question is yes and no. Yes, because they understand franchising and some of the nuances that come with that, but that can all be taught. But they also come with bad habits. They also come with preconceived notions. With Adam, I got a blank slate, and I got a willingness to learn and a willingness to jump in. He asked the right questions. He continues to this day, after working for me for 3.5 months, at this point, continues to ask the right questions. And to the point where sometimes it was like, man, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm like, you're never bothering me. This is what we're here for, right? Um, so what I would say is, if you have a heart to help people, if you have the ability to influence behavior, because again, in the military, it's really easy. I outrank you. You're doing what I said. Do push-ups, shut up, all that kind of stuff. We all did it. Um, you don't have that. You don't have that as a resource as a franchise business coach. It's not, hey, if you don't do this, you're in trouble and I'm going to eat. It's their own business.
Yeah.
So heart,
And
influence, and the willingness to learn.
so what was once you started, like, what was the first month like? What did you have to really come up to speed on? And when were you, when was your first meeting with it? And were you like tag teaming together with Sean to go visit one of the 23 franchisees? Like, can you just kind of walk us through that first, 30 or 60 days?
Yeah. So, on my very first day, Sean had already had a process for me to follow, an onboarding plan, which was 10 weeks. It primarily, it was split up between new franchisee training, which we hold once a month, anyway, for our onboarding franchisees. As we sell more franchises, they go to new franchisee training, which we have since being hired, revamped, and we run, Sean and myself. But all that aside, I went to that, sort of as if I were going to be a franchisee, to see what they're learning. And then, as Sean mentioned previously, prior to the acquisition by Eversmith, the Seals had 5 what we refer to as legacy franchisees. So the founder, who is in Charlotte, and then we have another franchisee in Columbia, South Carolina, so pretty close geographically to me, who have been doing it the longest, and were able to kind of get me some on the job training, because there's that doesn't really exist otherwise, unless you're actually out with the franchisees doing it. So yeah, I did 2 new franchisee trainings with people we were onboarding, and then spent a few weeks with our team in Charlotte and in Columbia. And yeah, was able to get up to speed. And then, slowly over time, I think I developed, between Sean and I, a plan to how we were going to implement me in my coaching. And so what that looks like now is, and that sort of happened towards the tail end of May. I would say I became autonomous, or as Sean would say, thrown to the wolves. Um, no, yeah, I do weekly coaching calls with all of the franchisees. We look at their P&L, we do goal setting, we review it. And then in addition to that, I actually go in person to visit the franchisees. We do field visits. I'll spend some time with them in their territory, and do whatever they need to focus on. So whether that be, new business development, or questions regarding installs, whatever that may be. I want to be sort of however I can best support the franchisee, and that's
Yeah.
what we're developing.
So I love that we're having this conversation, because there are so many preconceptions that we're kind of, expanding and getting through. So one, franchising is more than your Dairy Queen and Subway. There are so many different opportunities in franchising. And number two, you don't have to just be a franchisee if you don't want to go that route, but you are a consultant within this one brand. And it's an operations consultant. You're a revenue consultant. You're everything consultant. You actually see how these small businesses start and grow. Like, honestly, I think this is a very different type of consulting opportunity than your typical Bain, BCG, McKinsey, LEK, EYP, where you're working on a deck. And yes, you're working on really big companies around super interesting people. This is a very different opportunity set, which I think, just could appeal to so many people who are interested to see how a business actually stands up, how it grows, the problems, and you learn systems and processes to scale actual businesses. So this is a fascinating opportunity. Sean, can you
It's
talk?
pretty amazing, Jordan. Not to interrupt, because while we say franchise business, coach, consultant, however you want to look at, most of these franchisors that I've worked with over 26 years, we think, oh, consultant and 1099, all that. No, Adam is a salaried employee, for the SEALs, right? So it's not a thing. It's not a case where, because I got a lot of these people that are consultants are the same. They're trying to drum up business. They're doing sales calls and all that kind of stuff. Um, Most franchisors that have grown to a certain spot have franchise business coaches or consultants or franchise advisors. There's a million names for the role, but most of them are salaried positions that have benefits available to them with health and medical and all that kind of stuff. Um, but what you did there is hit the nail on the head. Like, when you're getting out of the military, when you're transitioning out, what's next? Like, when I got out of the Army in 1997, I went right back into restaurant management because as a kid I was working at Taco Bell, right? And I had a buddy of mine that got out a year before me that was like, hey man, I got this job with corporate McDonald's, and it was easier for them to beat what we were making in the military in the late 90s. And so I got out and went to work for corporate McDonald's, right? Um, but when people are in this day and age, and there's things like ACAP, Army Career and Alumni Program is what it was called when I transitioned out of the military. It was in its infancy in 1997. Maybe people are concerned about how much money it takes to start their own business, and there's obviously, you're familiar with the programs that are out there for veterans to help with that, but it is another opportunity to be like, if you come from a strong ops background, when Adam was talking about, he was the ops NCO. I was an ops NCO, at the battalion level, before I got out too. So, I that was another thing right there. I'm like, okay, then he's going to get what we're going through,
Yeah.
right? As an example. So there's a lot of different routes for veterans, for people transitioning out, to look at, do I want to work for myself and own my own business? Because, right, we get that as veterans, but there's also a thing that's like, maybe I'm not quite ready for that yet, but I can learn the business. I can learn a business. I can learn how to support a business. And then, I've seen in my career a lot of people that were franchise business coaches that run out and become franchisees of the franchise that they were, originally a coach at. And typically they do better than the other franchisees because they've heard all the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they take that knowledge and go, watch this.
Yeah. Because you've seen it across not just your individual
Correct.
franchisee or franchise, but you've seen it across the entire system that you're
Yes.
working with.
Yeah.
Why did you choose, 26 years into this, why did you choose this route and to become a head of a brand versus deciding to be a franchisee? And, where do you live?
I live in Austin, Texas.
Of like, I'm going to get the SEALs. Like, I understand the playbook. I'm doing this for 26 years. I'm not only going to get the SEALs, but I'm going to get all the other brands. And because of my reputation, I'm going to do this and I'll be able to scale it fast and sell it.
Oh yeah.
Like, why have you chose this route, versus, going down the franchisee route and then doing that?
Sure. It's a great question. And, the answer is somewhat personal, but I'm happy to share it. My specific reason for continuing along this path as opposed to being a franchisee, and there was a part of me when I first got brought on board, because again, a lot of my years in franchise support was in restaurants, and I can tell you that the number of times someone walked into a restaurant that I supported or I ran, as a director, to ask me about my gaskets was zero. It did not happen. And so when I saw the rollout as director of operations and what was going on, I was like, oh my God, this is genius. The reason I didn't decide to go the franchise route, quite honestly, was my wife. Unfortunately, my wife has had two primary cancers in the last couple of years. So not having rock solid health insurance is not an option for me right now.
Yeah.
Fortunately, she's cancer free, and she works too. So we've got a couple things going on there. But that was the main reason. Now,
Well,
one of
then,
the things that I said as I learned more and I got brought on board is like, man, maybe I should have bought a franchise with all the restaurant connections I have in Austin.
yeah.
And 3 weeks later, we sold Austin to a different franchisee. So I'm like,
Well, can we talk a little bit about with one of the new franchisees, in the first 30, 60, 90 days or whatever that is, what's the 80/20 of the advice that you're giving them where they on either on the revenue side, the marketing side, the ops side, where when they're standing a business up, that they need the most coaching that draws upon your experience across the other, 23 franchisees?
sure. You know what? I'll let Adam talk to that because I think his answer is going to be exactly what I would say.
If the
Because
system works, it will.
because we're but we're he and I are lockstep on that because we're knee deep in it right now, and I
Yeah.
can if he doesn't say what I think he'll say, then we'll have a conversation after the podcast is over. No, I'm kidding. But 80% of what's going on, I think he's going to have the right answer. So
Yeah.
go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, so when when a franchisee, goes through their onboarding, and then the first real phase for us, there's some phone calls and meet the team day where Sean and myself may meet them and kind of give them a broad overview. But once they actually sign their franchise agreement, the first step for them is new franchisee training, which starting in May, so last month, was one of our first things that we did. We revamped our entire training. So now, like I said, it's myself and Sean that are primarily doing their training, and that's about a week long. And then they go out into their territories and open their business. So they have training, and then they go. And by this time, all their onboarding should be complete for the most part. And they're, if they leave training next week, then July 1st, they're hitting the ground running. So what that looks like is, we get on these weekly coaching calls, or in the beginning, probably twice a week, just to make sure that there's that extra layer of support for them getting their feet underneath them. And specific to our brand, the Seals, it is a very sales first brand. So if you gotta get out of your comfort zone for a lot of our franchisees, and you have to go sell yourself and your brand to your potential customers. Oftentimes being restaurants, but you have to go and explain the need, and present the product and explain the warranty and why you should use us. There are several competitors. But that is probably the thing I would say to answer your question. But in the first 60 days, the thing that we focus on the most is new business development and getting someone out of their comfort zone and getting them into the door and making that sale. And then the last thing, just while we're on the topic of new becoming a franchisee, and another thing as myself as the FBC, that I owe each franchisee is within their first 6 months of business, I owe them a field visit. So within your it's generally not going to take that 6 months. I would ideally like for it to be, maybe a month or two after they get their feet under them, so I have some baselines to go off of. But that's something else that is a perk to franchising, is I'll actually go out there and go into their territory with them within the first couple months of their business being open.
And he hit the nail on the head, right? The 80/20 rule, to be specific, Jordan, is 80% of the time with a brand new franchisee, what we're focused on is, what activities are they doing to drive their top line revenue, right? How many restaurants are they going to and trying to get in there and give an estimate to? What does that look like? How many estimates are they turning in? So the 80% of the time, what we're doing is we're helping them drive sales. 20% of the time is follow up. It's help with CRM and systems. It's other types of meetings with what are better sales techniques as far as active listening, overcoming objections, all those things that are out there. And then it's, some kind of professional development. We just did a webinar so that these franchisees understand a little bit about food safety, and they can speak directly to these restaurant managers and how these gaskets are critical pieces of food safety. So that's kind of the way the 80/20 breaks down for the first 60 to 90 days.
Awesome. So maybe shifting over to the um, opportunities for vets and franchise as franchisees, like what are the opportunities available to them?
Absolutely. So, and I think I'll let Adam chime in on some of the Eversmith stuff specifically. But I would say, we definitely want you at Eversmith, whether that's with the seals, doing gasket replacement, or any of the other 6 brands that we currently have under the portfolio. Check out eversmithbrands.com for all the details. Just about every franchisor out there offers some kind of incentive program for veterans to be able to become franchisees. A lot of them will have a reduced franchise fee. I know Eversmith does. Obviously, there's a lot out there, inside the AFA with VetFran to help get them into it. There are preferred lenders out there if you don't have the financial capital right off the bat. There are a lot of lenders out there that specifically look towards veterans, and they partner with the SBA or private equity or whatever it is. To be able to, if you don't have a nest egg saved up and it looks like it's going to cost you more than you have to open your business, there are resources out there specifically for veterans that understand, the sacrifice, the service, and everything else, and the inherent knowledge that comes with being a veteran to be able to help them with that. But I'll let Adam talk to the specific stuff that Eversmith does.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jordan, I can send you the link following the call, but it's pretty simple. Eversmithbrands.com/veterans. We have an entire page on our new website dedicated to veterans, specifically on the franchisee side. So if you can plug that in, that'd be great. But just to go over some numbers, uh, over 11% of Eversmith Brands' 325 franchise owners are veterans. In our specific brand, the Seals, we have over 14% of the owners are veterans. And obviously the Eversmith Brands being led by a Marine Corps combat vet, we're making a very big push, for veteran franchisees because we see the success that our veteran franchisees are having. Um, Alongside with the discounted franchising fee, um, I think the success, and this is on an individual basis, but I think, for me specifically, um, something that everyone deals with in the military is the lack of autonomy, and ownership is huge. So I think what people are satisfied with once they become a franchisee, or really just you're a business owner, is what it boils down to, is you're your own boss. So that's a huge perk, number one. um, and I think that's something that a lot of guys are missing out on. With being in the military, some guys, being career veterans, 20 years, the autonomy is huge. The other thing that makes veterans extremely successful in franchising is their work ethic and their grit, and that applies especially in Eversmith Brands, which are all B2B commercial services. So they're not businesses where you're just sitting back and sitting in a chair all day. It's you're out there getting your hands dirty. You're in kitchens sweating, over grease traps or whatever, however that looks like, or you're landscaping. So I think that's, it translates very well, especially to the military. You have that work ethic instilled in you. You're hardworking, and you want to be a business owner. The amazing thing about it is you're not on an island by yourself. You have a layer of support. You have me, you have Sean. Regardless of where you are, if it's a well established franchisor, they have systems in place and they have support for you. So it's really, the best of both worlds. You become a business owner, but you also are not out there by yourself.
Love it. Um, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you guys? I know in 51 Vets, we have our Slack channel, but if, other people are interested who might see this on YouTube or other channels, like what would be a good way to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, I think the best way out there, I think there's a contact us link on just about every one of our websites. Sealsgaskets.com is specific to the seals. Um, that's probably the easiest way, just between uh, everything we're doing. Matter of fact, when we hang up here, I'm running to the airport because I'm doing a franchise visit tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably the easiest way is to use the contact us section on the websites.
Awesome. And for that veteran specific page that you mentioned, it's on the franchising in the bar, and it's a drop down for veterans.
Yes.
People want to go to it. Well, guys, this is absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time for doing this. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, for sure. And Adam, congrats on the role.
Yeah, thank you for putting this together.
Awesome. All right, guys, thanks. And let's hold
Thank
on.
you.